Hey, ready?
All right. John, can we hear you? We can't hear you, John. It happens every time.
Right.
So I've got a lag here that's really bad. And even my own video is seconds behind me actually talking. So I'm going to try and deal with this the best I can by pausing after each person talks. And just, I hope it's out for the audience. But Bram Cohen, you are literally a hero of mine since I lost Napster and then got it back. You know,
thank you.
We had music then. Oh my God. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I'm even old enough to remember Napster.
Right. I retired as a cryptologist out of the Navy in 1994, and a number of my friends who retired went into building different types of codexes, and I like I said, I remember all of the times of Napster and all of that stuff that was happening in mid to late 90s. And you guys stepped in and just did some miracle stuff with MP3s and all of that. That's just very, very cool stuff.
Well, and the best part was you kind of put the music industry moguls kind of in a box. It's like, damn, how do we get out of this? Yeah. So today we have freedom of distribution for a modest fee, of course. But
you know, the really telling thing I think is Netflix. That Netflix basically saved them. Netflix showed them the way forward, and they tried to kill it. The only reason, there were two reasons Netflix made it. The first one was doctrine of first sale, that they couldn't tell them you can't like send out DVDs that way. And the second one was the Starz deal, that Starz had licensing rights that included online streaming because they hadn't thought about that in advance. So there were a few years there where Netflix's streaming was entirely off the Starz contracts.
But yeah, basically, yeah. Bram and I were like the pincer movement. So I had been trying to get the music business to do the right thing and sell, and then Universal bought eMusic, and Bram had boxed them in from the you can't overcharge, you can't make it consumer unfriendly.
Yeah. I love it. And so here you guys are on our show. This is like Christmas early.
We came for the music industry. We're now here for banking.
Okay, that works. Yeah.
Well, Graham, one of the things that I'm curious about during the time that you kind of jumped in 98, wasn't the Apple iPod kind of becoming, or Apple was working on that? iTunes was using a different codex. How did you guys work into that?
Well, BitTorrent just transfers big files and is pretty indifferent to what kind of files they are. So at the time, MP3s were not trivially small, but they were small enough that you could just kind of download them directly. But like video was so big that no one was even thinking about distributing it online. That was just unthinkable. And BitTorrent actually made it practical to do that, pirated or not. It was just not happening prior to that. So I wasn't even thinking about video at the time it came out. Oh, and also people would pirate games back then.
Right.
Yeah, which they don't do now because, well, you're downloading a whole bunch of malware. Pirate game these days.
Well, yeah, almost everything that's downloadable now has got strings attached to it in one form or another.
Yeah, so, the world has changed a lot. Back then, people would literally just download games from pirate sites, and they usually wouldn't have malware in them. I mean, if you go back far enough, people just wouldn't put security. Like in the early 90s, people just wouldn't put security on internet computers. It was just standard passwords, and nobody broke into things and destroyed them. You just didn't do that. That was a different world than the one I live in.
The thought was it's a small box. How bad can it be?
Yeah.
And we were on a good day, 1200-bit modem was a good thing to have.
Yeah, there's nothing
Commodore
important.
64, baby.
Yeah. It was like,
The
there's
Amiga
nothing
upgrade.
important on the internet. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
It's just the
you know,
internet.
for us, I would imagine that, that just seems like yesterday, because we all grew up without the internet, right? And then mid-90s, this whole internet thing really started to come on, and we're all just kind of rolling with that tide. And now, I mean, geez, guys, the mid-90s was 30 years ago.
There's a Gen Z person the other day who commented on there being an 18-hour internet outage, and I said, when I was younger, there was an 18-year internet outage.
Right. So when I entered the dispatch center, the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, for the very first time, as every once in a while they pull troops off the street and wanted you to cover for them, we used paper IBM cards to take down the information by hand, and then it was a paper slot system as received, dispatched, cleared. You literally were moving these cards all the time. I remember when they went from a point-to-point radio system to talk to Michigan State Police, which is quite a ways from us, to a Motorola system, a multiplex duplex, and it was just like crystal clear. And we're thinking, wow, we're in tall cotton. They hadn't even come up with the internet yet.
Yeah.
And then you go into the dispatch center probably a month later, and they have this keyboard, and everybody's freaking out because it's like, wait a minute, you mean I can talk to the FBI on this thing? The birth of NCIC. So just to live through that time is incredible. And then to see BitTorrent and this huge shift to the way information is managed. And I'm quite frankly convinced that all of this is the precursor to what we face today, and that's cryptocurrency and a movement away from government control. So good on you, man.
Well, Bram and I are about the same exact age, and so he and I were both freshmen right before the web became a thing. So, the internet was there before, and I remember logging into a VAX to sneak onto the internet from a university computer that I probably shouldn't have had access to on my Amiga. But anyway, and so when I was a freshman at Carolina, I was sitting in front of a Sun workstation and was using, I think, Gopher still. And I was looking at, University of North Carolina, Thunderstorms Matter. And I was looking at a real-time weather feed. And it was one of my real aha that things were about to change very significantly.
Yeah.
I had a very similar experience in the Navy. I did intelligence kinds of things. And I remember going to Moffett Field in the Bay Area, and there was a building there run by a 3-letter agency, and they let me in, and I recall watching a representation of, and they weren't characters, it wasn't any kind of GUI, it was X's and O's and dashes and lines, but you could watch real time enemy aircraft taking off on their runway. And that was like my holy crap moment of this thing is becoming real. This is connecting people globally.
So I'm dying to ask, what is I'm going to sound like a total juvenile, like kindergarten, but that's okay because you're the big brains in the room. So what's the status of BitTorrent now? Has it been wrapped into something else?
It sold off to a crypto scammer years ago.
Oh. Well, thank God. So you're the guy that's at fault.
I did not have sufficient control to stop that from happening. So,
okay.
At least the cash was green.
Yeah. And that's always a good thing. It's going to be interesting when the day comes when we can no longer say that.
Indeed.
because
well, it might still be green.
Yeah, we're quickly headed that way, I think. And so
I'm sorry, did you say the cash is green?
I said it may still be green. Chia is green. I was keeping.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, Mark has got actually some cash that's not necessarily green, but still cash. So it looks like, yeah. Oh yeah, there you
There's
go.
some green.
I just got back
Keep
from
this on my
Australia.
desk to remember inflation happens.
Hey, don't put that in your wallet because it will turn into a leaf and disintegrate.
It does not surprise me.
From experience. Yeah, I'm not. It like dries out or something. I'm not sure what it is, but it's like.
I just came back from Australia, and they have very interesting cash bills over there that are very, very hard to copy and distribute. And so they've got plastic and all kinds of security features in their cash.
Oh yeah, there's a chemist who took I forget which bill it was, but he tried to dissolve it in like acid or something, and it turned into just this like clear plastic sheet.
Yeah.
It's actually made out of paper. There you go. What is that?
That is what's called a goldback, gentlemen. And I'm probably going to have to just pull out a regular one. That is a collector's item for.
Yeah, like it.
They just issued the Arizona goldback about 2 weeks ago. But this is the artwork.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, pretty.
That's 24 karat gold.
Mm-hmm.
And a denomination of 100, which means that's 1/10 of an ounce of 24 karat gold.
Mm-hmm.
And in Arizona, let me see. You may not be able to see it, but there is a serial number on there that can be verified.
Mm-hmm.
And all the artwork for the various denominations is different.
Mm-hmm.
Every single state that has these has artwork that is individualized to their state. So when you talk about money going from green to something else, you're exactly right. It's going to something else. But this one here is a collector's item. And we've talked about it before on this show. The thing that I think is brilliant about cryptocurrency, and I would love to get the perspective of you gentlemen, ain't run by the government.
Mm-hmm.
It's run by the marketplace. And that's one of the reasons why I think that it probably is going to surpass the other private sector entity known as the Federal Reserve, which, as we all know, is not federal, and it sure as hell isn't a reserve. But we got to have that fluidity, and that's what I think you gentlemen were pioneers of to get all this going.
Well, the thing that matters there actually is the much more pedestrian thing of the banking system charges too damn much just to move money around. Like
Unnecessarily.
Like, why is the payment system making almost as much off of a grocery store as the grocery store is? That doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
Well, and our internet is kind of weirdly designed because it was designed around credit cards and was the only option at the time. But it means that you don't have an entire kind of swath of natural commerce that you can usually do. And so ultimately, I spent, 20, 30 years trying to convince people the only thing you could use is credit cards online. And now it's kind of the job to turn that around and create new business models that don't necessarily rely on credit cards and don't make the customer the product at, Facebook and Google and other places.
Yeah, there's this kind of basic thing which the app stores do well, but they charge yet even more money, which is any recurring payment I have set up, I should be able to see it and turn it off at any time.
Yeah. Instead, you have to print off a piece of paper, take it to get notarized, then take it back, scan it back in, and go through that whole rigmarole.
What's even funnier about that? So I used to run the core backend subscription company. So NFL, Sunday Ticket, all that sort of stuff. It turns out that the people who made it easy to cancel had a much better overall customer lifetime because they would get people to come back. And the people who made it really hard to cancel, they would never get the customer back at all. So it was actually sort of counterintuitive that it actually was the right business move to make it extremely easy to pause, to cancel, and then, certainly they'd bother you a little bit of, hey, do you want to come back? Here's a good deal. But again, you were able to hit the no, I'm done button, right?
Yeah, I think the key word you use there is pause.
Mm-hmm.
and because there was a mindset, and I experienced this in the private sector after I retired from DPS. There's two camps. One is kind of like having a daughter. Daughters understand that no really means not right now.
Ask again.
Okay. If you ask again, I don't know, in a week or so, and you wear dad down, sooner or later, okay, sure. Okay. But to your point, it's more about pause. And then the other camp was, oh no, we're going to be hardcore because they're really not going to come back. It's the assumption that they're not going to come back versus the assumption that one day they will. And I agree with you. That's huge.
Yeah, I've always thought that it was a little bit of like, do you actually believe in your product or not? Because if you believe in your product, you should feel confident that you can recover a customer because you've got value to add. And if you don't, well, that tells you everything you need to know. And you're probably right. You probably don't want to let them out easily.
Right.
Well, I think, so you just threw out another word that I think is important in this conversation in the context of cryptocurrency. And what's the value proposition?
That's right.
If the customer, here's a great example. So I worked for Intuit for a while, was in the QuickBooks division. I'm the guy that discovered they were getting ripped off to the tune of millions of dollars. And there was this break, I think, where I think management realized that if the customer gets used to using QuickBooks, then stops using QuickBooks and goes to another software, they're going to come back. And they did. That's why they had, I think when I left the company, it was like 96% market share. That's insane when you look at small business accounting software. But that was the attitude was, well, our product does what it does and it does it the best. And if you want to go to something cheaper or whatever, okay, we'll be waiting for you if you decide you want to come back. And taking that friendlier, softer approach, I think served the company very well.
Well, yeah, here's our utility for importing the data you had in a different product into ours.
Yeah, about the only reason you left QuickBooks was because you became not a small business anymore. I mean, that was the really only reason you'd leave.
Right.
Yeah, and then and this I think dovetails nicely into the platforms for cryptocurrency. They did something that was genius. They created an accountant version and then had the accountants be their acolytes. And it's like, if you want me to continue to service your account, you're going to have to switch to QuickBooks. Oh, by the way, I can help you do that. And then it was just like a snowball going downhill. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. So now we see some of that activity, I think, going on in the cryptocurrency world. The ones that are easy to use, the ones that feel safe, they're the ones that are really moving fast and forward.
We've adopted some of that strategy in the sense of we want to have the early institutions be the things that kind of lead the way. Unfortunately, I think most people aren't really in a good spot to make is this a good blockchain or not decision. Right? It's a very hard set of skills. It's everything from cryptography to networking to financial institutional knowledge to understanding securities laws. It's a hard topic. And the good news is that the pros with real billions to trillions on the line, they'll invest time to understand. And so we actually think that's going to be the main kind of indicator for the rest of the world of, the difference between cryptocurrency claims and cryptocurrency use. And I mean, a great example is the World Bank had an interesting project, Politics of the Side, but it's basically tracking all the voluntary carbon. And they had done 2 different trials on private blockchains effectively, and it paused the project until Chia launched. And once Chia launched, they took a look at it, ran a last kind of trial, and it's now been in production for a couple of years where literally 99% of all voluntary carbon since the inception of that market to current is all traced on the Chia blockchain. And you don't hear a lot about it, it just actually works.
I think that's one of the interesting things that's going on right now in the crypto world is a lot of it is just working. And it's all tracking itself and keeping itself honest. I think is where we're finding issues is in the use of crypto, trading crypto. Some of those exchanges are where we're having more problems with crypto than the crypto itself.
Well, everybody confuses centralized exchanges with actual atomic swaps, and it's a bad thing. I mean, you know, like the whole point of FTX is don't use FTX.
If you wouldn't mind, now that you've opened that box, could you explain the difference so that the folks that are tuned in here, most of the folks that probably get it, but we've got a lot of novices that tune into the show.
Yeah, so the issue is who has custody. And without getting too deep into that one, the issue is like if you go to Coinbase, you buy some Bitcoin. That Bitcoin is controlled by keys owned by Coinbase. And so it means that every scammer and every thief on the planet tries to figure out how to convince you to give them your credentials to their Coinbase account, steal your money out of your Coinbase account, put it somewhere else. And one of the major ways people do hack you is they go to one of the mobile phone operators that you're using, and they spend $25 to bribe somebody in customer service, and they change your mobile phone number to their mobile phone, and they use that to go reset all your passwords and take your brokerage account, your Coinbase account, everything. Happens all the time. It's a very serious risk. The real opportunity of cryptocurrency is, hey, look, Coinbase is a very nice place to have a centralized order limit book and buy, but then move your Bitcoin to self-custody. Now, self-custody on Bitcoin and Ethereum still aren't the greatest. Chia, we've gone to a whole nother level. We talk about that, where you're using your mobile phone as your hardware device, and you have the ability to recover, and you have things like delays on recovery and alerts if somebody tries to recover your stuff. So it makes it a lot easier. But the goal of cryptocurrency is that your phone, which has a really surprisingly secure element inside of it, should be the device you use. In the interim, you might use a ledger, you might use a Trezor. There are sort of kind of bespoke solutions, but they're not free from trouble. I'll say it that way. But the whole point is that you should be able to really actually self-custody your bank account, your brokerage account, your cryptocurrency. And oh, by the way, that's all the same actual tools, the same place. You know, really fundamentally, you know, banks are going to exist because they're going to loan you money, but banks aren't necessarily going to exist because they're going to keep your money. There's going to be a big difference there.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm back. My Wi-Fi is no good, so I finally figured out that I can tether my iPhone's LTE through to this computer, and now I'm back in real time. That was really painful because literally everything I was saying and you were saying was coming through 5-second delayed. So if I can take the mic for a second. Bram Cohen, holy cow, brother. Like, you literally are my hero. Like, I remember having Rolling Stones Waiting on a Friend acoustic and all this amazing music. And I came home one day and it was gone. And then I heard that this genius named Bram Cohen had invented something called BitTorrent that would allow someone to take little bits, nothing that our Recording Industry Association or MPAA could come after you for or anything, but these bits, and I'm not saying that was all nefarious, and certainly BitTorrent wasn't. You guys were literally probably the smallest of the torrents because you guys literally would only do indie and that type thing. But I know that you guys did something like, you can quote, tell me if I'm wrong on the quote, but something like 167 million computers downloaded some form, whether eMule or eDonkey or MiniNova or Pirate Bay, or, you know, I can go through the list, but literally you were the first decentralized computer system in the world.
So
am I right?
So BitTorrent was all the torrents, right? So there's these torrent websites, but they were all using BitTorrent, the thing that I created as the engine that transferred everything. And comparing to eMule and Napster and stuff, I don't know about number of users, but yeah, I don't know about number of users, but in terms of amount of data pushed, BitTorrent just obliterated them in terms of amount, just going out. The innovation of BitTorrent was that peers could start uploading basically, well, two things. One, it's just easy to integrate with the web and use. So it wasn't trying to like decentralize the discovery part, because that's hard to decentralize. It was just, we're going to decentralize the distribution part of the whole thing. And then, so integrated with the web nicely and is easy to use. And then the other thing is peers start uploading pieces of files as soon as they start downloading. So you don't have to have downloaded the whole thing before you start uploading. So basically all the potential upload capacity that's out there, it just jumps on and starts trying to use immediately. And there's a bunch of trickery in doing that. And I guess a third thing that seems really small to me, but is probably a big deal, is the hashes of pieces are you pre-download those, so they're authenticated. So you get upfront authentication information about the file that you're getting, so you can download pieces from peers and validate that those are the pieces that they're supposed to be. I don't make a big deal out of that usually because it's cryptographically trivial. Actually, that's what secure hashes are for. Yeah, it's just trivial. But sure, yeah. But anyway, I guess that was an innovation for the time. Yeah, so just better technology, easier to use kind of stuff.
One of my favorite stats is in the late 2000s, early 2010s, BitTorrent was about 80% of the global internet at night.
Wow, 80%.
80%.
Well, yeah, because everyone's asleep and it's just running.
I gotta ask, like, where did this come from, man? Like, were you just like a Napster user also, and when it went away, you're like, oh well, let me just come.
No, I wasn't. I was never big on pirating things. No. I kind of avoided doing it for legal liability reasons. Okay, the story is in late 1999. So for most of the year 2000, I'd worked at a bunch of startups you've never heard of. And in 2000, I went to work for a crypto company. Which, I mean, there's a question of what is the definition of a crypto company. If Riptle's a cryptocurrency, Mojonation was a cryptocurrency. That was supposed to be the all singing, all dancing cypherpunk project. It died because it was trying to do way too much. But it was a glorious failure. It like led directly to BitTorrent and Bitcoin and everything. There are a few
Zcash and Chia.
Yeah. There are a few. Zuko worked there as well. So there are a few failures as successful as Mojonation. But yeah, kind of hard to be successful as a cryptocurrency when mining hasn't been invented yet. But there was an awful lot of learnings from that were critical to Bitcoin working later. So that project basically failed, kind of collapsed under its own weight. I'd learned a lot of lessons working on it. In particular, I'd learned, first off, that just in terms of where I'd made progress, I thought having swarming distribution was the one part of it where I made real progress on making something happen. I had a much better idea of what things were really hard to do and what things were more possible. So I decided to make a tool that just did one very narrow thing, and that was just swarming distribution, and I was actually going to get it to work. The term of art these days is minimum viable product, which people didn't go around saying in high-minded terms back then, but I most definitely knew it as a concept from my own experience. So that's kind of the story of BitTorrent.
Wow, just incredible. I mean, like, and where was that moment where it worked for the first time, and what did that feel like?
I showed it to my roommate and was all excited, and he looked kind of a little perplexed at me being excited at this really not very exciting things happening on the screen.
Was that Len?
Yeah, that was Len.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't been doing a good job of explaining what this was all about. I was just working on this project that people didn't understood what it did, that I would babble about and try and explain to them on a technical level, and they had no idea what I was talking about. So it was only after you saw it plugged in and thousands of people started downloading something all of a sudden, and it's like, oh, okay, now I understand what's going on here. You get these things. This happens in engineering, right? That you get a pencil and paper calculation, which says blah de blah should happen. And now there's a lot of engineering is actually getting your model right. What's a primary effect? What's a tertiary effect? What are the important things to capture in this napkin math that I'm doing so that when I actually try to build it out, it'll actually work. But it's kind of funny when this very napkin math thing gets turned into a very real thing, that you have these proof points in the middle where you can kind of see, okay, this is validating the model, but it's not doing the thing yet. And then when the thing actually happens, when you've been following the engineering, it's the expected outcome. But to everyone else, it kind of looks like all of a sudden, boom, it worked.
Yeah, right. Right. And how quick did it take off? You say thousands, but like, how did people even,
well, let's
how
see.
did,
So I
and
started,
how fast did it hockey stick?
well, I'd been working on it for like a year and a half before it got used for much of anything. And the implementation still kind of sucked at the time. And then it was probably, it immediately jumped to thousands of users. And then got up to...
Did you put it in a forum, or like, how did people even hear
No,
about it?
well, there was a publicity stunt where I put up some porn. But then actually, the bit of trivia, we actually got more downloads from a quasi bootleg recording of the Grateful Dead spin-off band, The Other Ones. There was a live recording of that a friend of mine did and posted it, and people were much less sketch about downloading weird software, weird executable to download that than to download porn, because they'd been warned about about malware from the former, but not the latter.
Sure.
But then, so that got, in the dozens of, downloaders, maybe hundreds. I think it was hundreds actually. But then people started, I forget the order in which this happened, but Red Hat 9, they were trying to charge for it, and we posted it using BitTorrent, and everyone just downloaded using BitTorrent because that worked better than the thing people had actually paid for. So that got a lot of downloads. And also people started distributing anime using it. That was another big thing. At the time, you couldn't get anime outside of Japan, like at all. It's just not happening. So there were these groups who would translate the anime into English and then make it available online. And they had these kind of code of ethics that as soon as it was actually available officially in English, they'd stop distributing it. But until then, it's like, whatever, we're not harming anybody. So they started using it, and that got a lot of downloads as well. That was another big chunk in the number of users, definitely an ongoing thing. And I really stopped following it after that. But yeah, it was maybe, I would say between when it started getting any use and when it was being used a lot was maybe like a year.
Wow, that's so fast. And did the adult industry, because at that time you would essentially download an image, and an image would take a long time, but there were no real streaming movies or adult films, anything else. Did the adult film industry, because they're so cutting edge as far as they always are there at the next step, they just are always pushing that envelope, did they actually embrace it, or was it just individuals downloading?
No, they didn't. No, it was just the pirate sites distributing stuff. They were, yeah, the adult industry was not on the cutting edge of this, surprisingly enough. I think the adult industry only really kind of got the internet. I mean, same way as everything else, people were pirating. So they basically, nowadays, I believe adult people can claim their, channels on the streaming, on the porn tubes, right? And get monetization off the porn tubes, which they hate because they're kind of at the mercy of the porn tubes policies. Like everyone else is at the mercy of like Instagram and Meta and Twitter and everything. But yeah, it wasn't until like OnlyFans that they got it figured out, I think. And yeah, back then there were, I believe there were just starting to be cam girl sites. I don't know the history of this very well, but there had been cam girl sites, but a lot of them were getting kind of quasi trafficked and weren't really getting paid well, and it was pretty icky. So yeah, no, it's funny because the porn industry was on the cutting edge of everything through like, VHS and stuff. They were definitely on the cutting edge of that, but not not the internet. They kind of took a while to
Well, this
adapt.
was the credit card network again. So a lot of people talk about how all these different sites have these horrible terms of services, and they all pass through from the underlying banks like Wells Fargo, that was kind of the primary e-commerce provider to, you name it, porn, Amazon, anybody. And so as soon as you start getting to these, culturally questionable things, the bankers all get very high and mighty and Puritan, let's just say it that way. So yet again, one of those things where the internet has been shaped by credit card policy and not by like what commerce would normally build.
Did you embrace it, Gene? Did you take the torrent when you were doing e-music and doing a subscription? Because you must have had to have a massive warehouse of servers to serve that up. Or did you use BitTorrent technology?
I have to tell you that when Bram originally was saying he was going to build this thing, I was like, it's, hopium. There's no way it'll work. So when it worked, I was completely shocked. Now, we certainly looked at it for internal distribution. I mean, it turns out that quietly BitTorrent is used by like Meta to update their entire server farm because it's just so much better at distributing, large things along big bandwidth.
Yeah, they use it. They use it between their servers within their own data center, which seems kind of like shooting a mouse with an elephant gun. But you'll have a dead mouse when you do that. So
well, you have plenty of bandwidth left over is the key, right? Like you never really eat into your own bandwidth. In fact, it's funny. We use it. Syncing your blockchain node takes a moment, and so we've just got BitTorrent files of that every quarter, and so you can go use BitTorrent and catch up to the kind of current and download that for your node and go. And it just works, right? Like, I run one here and I've got a fiber connection, but like, I don't even notice that I'm running a BitTorrent node for that.
Wow. So did you guys bake BitTorrent into distribution then of Chia blockchain? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we use it as one of the primary methods to catch you up with the history of, 4 years of the blockchain, right?
Wow.
It's a big file.
Yeah, I know. I've seen a download of a new QT wallet take 45 minutes to catch up with just a 2-year-old blockchain. Yep. So how much faster is it when using this? How much?
Well, if you've got a good connection and you're using BitTorrent, you can get the entire 4 or 5 years in like 15 minutes, but that means you've got a good connection. But the key is with BitTorrent is it's going to be as fast as your connection can possibly be, because you're going to find all of the other fast upload connections and you're going to get those little bits from them. So you can actually like stuff the pipe effectively. So that's the problem. Like when you're connecting to Apple or Microsoft, even there you're taking like a single stream. And so you're, whatever the smallest choke point between their servers and your desktop is. With BitTorrent, you're literally looking around at everybody. And so like a lot of people end up connecting to me because I've got a gigabit of bandwidth upstream. And so you're going to get a lot of your file pretty quickly from, my instance of the BitTorrent.
Yeah, and Chia full nodes often rate limit people downloading from them because it kind of looks like a DOS attack. So you are, if you're syncing the blockchain, that's also happening peer-to-peer, but the peers aren't like, it's not set up to do that as fast as possible. And there are things we should probably get around to doing eventually to make it so that process is faster. But also the other benefit of downloading the whole Kerchunk thing is that's kind of pre-validated for you, and running the validation is slow. It's also slower than it should be. That's another thing we should work on more. We've sped it up a lot. We should speed it up a lot more, but yeah.
Any software company, there's always things to fix.
Yeah.
That's right. And hopefully fixing doesn't break something else. Good old software updates, right?
Yeah, well, particularly when you have a security product. And like we've been working on Chia Gaming for a while now, which is basically peer-to-peer poker where there's no casino and no rake. So that is about to go into alpha. And, the alpha is just going to have the reference game, but it's really weird working on it because it is literally the most sophisticated security application to ever run on a consumer device. But it is enabling the stupidest mobile game you have ever seen in your life on it. It's just complete instantaneous dopamine hit stuff.
And where is this gaming going to end up? Bram, Gene, where do you see this in 5 years, the gaming part of Chia? Because I got super excited just about the idea of buying Starbucks coffee with Tesla stock and being able to swap directly without going back into money. That blew my mind the last time. You didn't talk about gaming, or I missed it, Gene.
Well, you don't know, but gaming's hiding in what you just said. So let me explain what I mean by that. So the issue with gaming is peer-to-peer, and it is near real time. So it's like you go into a casino and you get your chips. And it takes a moment to get your chips. But once you have your chips, you can now play as fast as you want to play with one other person in a kind of peer-to-peer game. So the initial games are things like a Wordle for money, poker for money, Battleship for money, tic-tac-toe for money. These are coming from our developers. And so what we expect over kind of the next few months is that the development community is going to take that alpha and they're going to put good front ends and, a social environment in front of it so you can find players to play. And, we're going to expect people to be playing poker with their buddies for real money with no rake, no casino. Now, if your other side cheats, you actually have a cryptographic way to go and force the last round and come back to that state and leave in about a minute. And what that is what are called state channels. And so, when you talk about blockchains, they have a certain amount of transactions per second they can do on an L1. Well, in these gaming channels, once you go into a gaming channel, stake your money up, you can go as fast as possible. You can go, Web 2 speed, let's say it that way. And what that means also, you can do payments in those sorts of channels, and you can do trading in those sorts of channels. So in fact, this is a stepping stone to being able to do what we were talking about buying Starbucks with your Tesla stock, because you've got a trading channel. Now you don't have to wait for the next block. You can literally just go make the trade that turns Tesla into USDC and USDC over to Starbucks.
Yeah, the way the rules of the game are enforced are there has to be a gaming channel set up at the beginning of a session. So you got to wait a minute for that to go through. And then you start playing over that. So there are these like virtual coins that are sitting inside of the gaming channel that aren't real, but they can be made real. So if the person you're playing against tries to cheat or just disappears, or you lose your connection to them, then the game is taken on chain, which you would prefer not to do because it's slower and more costly. But then all these virtual coins become real coins. And the benefit of the whole thing is that whole history of how you got to that final state doesn't need to go on chain. So it's just the hands that are pending right now are the things that actually have to be played out on chain. And if there's no issue at all in the entire session, then you don't even have that. At the very end of the whole thing, the final hands are cleared out, and there's just one clean transaction to end the state channel, which pays out whatever amounts we were left with at the end of the session to both of us.
You'll have to get your bourbon delivered yourself, though.
Well, and so when you talk about gambling, if I went over to Marv's house and played a game of poker between friends and we put up real money, I don't think that's against the law.
Right.
And so if there's no rake and there's no casino, is it
right?
against the law?
Yeah, it's not against the law, and it's not a loophole either. That the laws governing gambling make very real distinction between games of skill versus games of chance, and between playing directly against somebody else and having a casino. So if you're playing directly against somebody else with no casino, a game of chance, then this is totally kosher and fine. Which is like, there's reasons for doing this, right? The saying is that the house always wins, right? If there's no house, somebody is winning and you're not all just getting scammed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so brilliant.
Yeah,
So
and we
this
do this
literally
because
could
we want to
become-
fill blocks with high value transactions. And if you consider your poker game close a good opening, I think that's a high value transaction.
Could be.
Yeah. So we're focusing very much on things that are clearly legitimate games of skill here. The medium is very constrained. It has to be like turn-based games with very few turns in them. Emphasis on being for money. So it turns out poker is a very good fit for this. There's subtle tweaks that have to be done to do it well, but poker is already a game designed to be played between assholes who don't trust each other, and works great for this medium.
It's actually key that it's played for money, because it's part of the game theory of these games is that because you got money on the line, you will behave in a self-motivated way, one way or the other.
Wow. So I now think perhaps this could become, I mean, I don't know how big this space is of games of chance between friends, but it seems like it could literally be hundreds of millions of people globally.
We think it's going to be large.
Yeah. Games
A billion
of
people?
skill.
Games of skill, not chance. Sorry.
Yes.
Chance is when you're playing against the house. You don't really have a chance because if you stay
Yeah,
long enough, you're going to take all the money.
games of chance is like the lottery. It's like, they're not a real.
But games of skill. So
Yeah.
it could literally be a game of literally anything. It could be literally, it could be a board game. It could be a card game. It could be any game.
Card games are better.
Requires,
Well, there's two things. One is there are issues with outside assistance, right? So a game like chess, it's kind of trivial for someone to get outside assistance. And it is possible for there are AIs for playing poker. Mixing up the rules helps with that because there's less. But there's always you think you're playing against this person who's a fish and they got their friend who's not a fish to come in and play for them, right? So there's always those kinds of issues. But you want to try and minimize that. But also, you really want games with as much skill as possible for as few turns as possible, because you don't want it to be that it unrolls the chain and now we're sitting here for 5 hours playing this thing out on chain. You want it to be that we're playing directly and closing it out quickly. So it's part of I happen as a side hustle to be a professional mechanical puzzle inventor. So I know something about game design. So we're coming out with a suite of games by the time of the beta that kind of show what things work really well in the medium and how to go ahead and implement those. And I'm trying really hard to take proven concepts and adapt them as minimally as possible to work well in the medium. You can't take just completely arbitrary games and put them in. It's a definite genre of these kind of I think you'll do X, so I'm going to do Y, but you then think I'm going to do Y, so you do Z kind of reasoning about these games. And poker is really the only one that's big right now in that space, but there are other things that can be done. So another thing that actually fits really well in an interesting way is Wordle. So there's going to be a 2-player Wordle game. We're not going to call it Wordle for trademark reasons, but it's that style of gameplay.
Yeah, and to be clear, you can play as many hands of poker as you want in a single session. It's just that each hand is, kind of discrete in a limited number of moves. That's where it kind of fits, right? So you don't want to have it'd be hard to play. You can't do it, but hearts, because you got so many moves, right, before you're done with that round of the game. Versus any poker variant, you're done pretty quickly, and then you're now in a new state that's kind of well known, and so you keep playing. And so you can play 50 hands, no problem. It's just you don't want to have to do 50 moves to come back to the chain. You want to be able to do 2 moves to come back to the chain.
It also happily makes these be really good casual mobile games, because you can just bam, 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 do it, and it's a cash game, so you can get out whenever you feel like it.
Oh, you need some XCH.
So Risk wouldn't be a game like that, because that takes
no. Risk is not a good fit.
Yeah, Command and Conquer bad.
Yeah.
As much as I want to take Poland. No.
So gaming, Gene, you talked about, and Marv was not here for that. He was in Australia. Welcome back, Marv, from Australia. I saw the picture with you in the sleeping kangaroo, and he was standing like this over the kangaroo. That was cute. But Marv didn't hear what you're doing as far as the financial side. I mean, the game side, once again, amazing. Wow, I see that being 100 million person market, incredible. But can you guys let us know, let the senators know, let the people know, what are you guys doing that's special about equity? And talk about CITadel, and talk about your partner, and talk about US Bank, and just, you blew my mind, blow their mind with this. This is incredible.
Yeah, it's worth backing up just a little bit and saying that, Bram and I have been around the block. And so in 2017, when people were doing ICOs, we looked at it and went, that's an illegal public offering, and that one's an illegal underwritten public offering. We're not going to do that. So we took a different path. We actually engaged with the SEC, and ultimately in 2023, if I get the dates right, we filed an S1, and people thought that Gary Gensler would jump out of the screen and laugh at me. And instead, we got a completely reasonable set of comments back. And we were using Credit Suisse First Boston as our underwriter. Do not bank where I bank. Our company's bank was Silicon Valley Bank, and my personal bank was First Republic Bank. So yeah, so we should fix that. Anyway, but after Credit Suisse fell apart, we were able to get down to 11 comments from the SEC. These are actually weirdly, we filed confidentially. It's posted publicly on the Crypto Task Force webpage at the SEC, so you can take a look at it if you want. But from that, we built a relationship with a bunch of now the ex-Credit Suisse First Boston folks. And one of them, Trent Martinson, came to me about 1.5 years ago and said, because he'd seen the SEC review kind of our unique feature set. And we'll talk about that in a second, but it's things like it's an open outcry OTC market where exchange is a verb and not a noun. We'll come back. And he said, look, there's this finance problem that I think large cap stocks are completely mispriced. And so I want to actually use the Chia blockchain and create effectively an exchange traded product that will take Microsoft stock, for example, and split it into the dividend component and everything else. And we'll call those a dividend certificate and the rest of it an asset certificate, and let them trade independently. Originally, we thought we'd do it just on the Chia blockchain, but we were like, okay, we'll have to blue sky it. And, you know, I'd say sophisticated securities folks, so we know what the heck we're going into. And it turned out that there was a nice American rule, and this foreshadows a little interesting point, that would have let us trade this exactly on nice American. And so we actually launched this with the SEC January of this earlier year, got all the way to expecting to trade this in September, and it's both Microsoft, Apple, and Broadcom to start. But right before Labor Day, the SEC said, hey, we have one request, and that is that we'd like you to switch to a 40 Act company from a 33 Act company. And of course, that was so poorly timed to be a few days before the government shutdown. So we're expecting in Q1 to take Microsoft out on the New York Stock Exchange and on the Chia blockchain. We use US Bank as our custodian and ETP platform effectively. And you can basically approach Permuto, is the name of the joint venture, and you can move your Microsoft DC or ACs from DTC, your brokerage account, to the blockchain. And when you do that, you get half off the fees. It is incredibly cheaper to administrate something like this on a blockchain. And just to give you a basic example.
Sorry. So just to make sure that I don't get past that. So if I'm a customer and I have this Microsoft stock and I want to be able to separate the dividend from the share itself, I would ask that my broker, whoever that is, send it to Permuto or I presume US Bank or someone. And
it'll be one of the US KP.
And now they're holding that certificate and they have it. So now I have a digitalized version of it, and anybody else that comes in and trades for it, it still stays there, but now that's trading around, but it has been put in custody of a reliable source.
That's right. So like when Microsoft pays its dividend, that goes to our account at US Bank, and then we take that money and send some of it to DTC for whoever still has the Microsoft dividend certificate in E-Trade, and then immediately distribute it on chain using, again, a new technology we have called Secure the Bag, which lets us spend one coin of all of the money and a list of all the wallet addresses, and it just fans out over the next couple hours. It's extremely cheaper on chain. Just tax, since it's a partnership, we have to give people K1s. We're going to spend a few $100,000 with PwC, who's the auditor and tax partner on this, going around brokerage firms per trust, figuring out who owned it that year and generating their K1s. But on chain, you walk up, you log in, we test your wallet, and we generate a K1 on January 1st from the information that's there on the blockchain.
Wow. And Bram, I have to come back to you. What prompted you to start XCH, and what problem did you see you were solving when you took on this task?
Well, I was looking into Bitcoin, right? There's this thing in Bitcoin of, hey, how can we make this be more secure, more distributed, and not use up so much electricity, right? Like, because the whole point is this is a secure distributed database. And so we want it to be more secure, more distributed, and a better database. That's kind of the things I was thinking about doing. So when we started, I had this plan of, well, I'm going to use proofs of space and time, because getting away from the proof of work that Bitcoin has is very, very difficult. Almost anything else you try doing just degenerates back into that again. So I had this plan of, okay, I'm going to do proofs of space and time and make a better on-chain programming environment. It's like, okay, great. All we got to do now is invent proofs of space, invent proofs of time, figure out how to stitch them together and come up with a better on-chain programming environment, whatever that means.
Simple. Oh, that's all.
5 years of R&D.
Yeah, I always tell people, whatever you do, don't have invent new math anywhere in your product roadmap. And people are like, hey, Bram, don't you? Yeah, I know.
Totally.
Yeah, so I don't recommend people do these sorts of shenanigans, but we got away with it. We actually, people did figure out, I'm very proud to say that the proofs of time and how to stitch the proofs of space and time together, there's not been a peep about that. That has been working great. Although we did have custom hardware made for the proofs of time. So but for the proofs of space, that's like super mathy, what we came up with there. That I personally came up with the thing we're using there, actually. Some people figured out how to cheese that a bit, not catastrophically, but they did figure out techniques for getting credit for more space than you actually have if you use a bunch of computation. So hitting kind of a new equilibrium, but not the one we want. So so me and one of the guys who figured out how to cheat it have been working for like the last almost 2 years on an iteration of the proof of space algorithm that is better based on what we now know of techniques that can be used to cheese it. And we've got it figured out. We know how to do it. So we're going to be rolling that out soon and switching everyone over to that.
But on the better programming environment,
Gene, sorry.
Yeah, on the better programming environment, we sat down on a kind of first principles basis, and one of our lead designers looked at us as we were like listing out the things you wanted in a better smart contracting environment. And he went, you're describing a Lisp. And we all kind of groaned and went, damn it, he's right. So the flip side is that we have a really made for nation state kind of programming environment. You're not going to see the $1 billion stolen by North Korea all the time. It's still one of the most adversarial programming environments in the world. So it's still not an easy thing to do right. But the way we went is instead of like an Ethereum, every developer like rewrites what an ERC20 token is. In our world, that is kind of a standard that comes from a standard library. And so like when you issue Microsoft DC, you don't have to like rewrite how a Chia asset token works. And it has some really neat features. It allows you to do things like global open outcry, peer-to-peer trustless trading. So what I mean by that is, let's say I want to buy a Microsoft DC and I've got 50 USDC. I sign a partial transaction that would spin 50 USDC out and would require that one Microsoft DC come back to me in that transaction. And then I put it on a peer-to-peer network that looks a little like BitTorrent called Splash, and it gets gossiped around the world. Anybody who wants to listen can listen to the open outcries. There's a website called Dexy.space that looks like an order limit book because they pull these all together and just display them. You, as the tape maker, can say, hey, this is valid for the next 15 minutes. It's valid for the next block. It's valid for the next hour. And as a taker, you look and go, hey, I'll sell you a Microsoft DC for 50. You download a little string. You can also get a QR code, or we often see people on X posting these in an X post. So you can actually like trade securities on X directly. You inspect it, and so now for sure cryptographically, yeah, 50 USDC is there. If I put one Microsoft DC and I put that on chain, it'll settle into my wallet with the 50 USDC, and the one will go over to the maker. It lets, real example, governments like Singapore propose to Costa Rica that I'll make this change in my voluntary carbon for that change in yours. Here's $1 million USDC. Email that over, and now Costa Rica inspects it, and they can either take it, counter it by creating a new one, or ignore it. And now you've got peer-to-peer global trustless trading with anybody.
The Chia on-chain programming environment is designed from the ground up to be auditable and extensible and interoperable. And you just do not get the kind of auditability and reliability you need for serious financial stuff without baking it into the whole entire stack. And we've had some opportunity to iterate on it now and get it pretty well dialed in. So when people are writing stuff in Solidity, which is, really a funding system for North Korea at this point. But there's a list of best practices to try to not get hacked by the North Koreans in that. And they're good best practices. But when you're doing stuff in Chia, it's kind of like you just have to do all of those. And then you have to do a whole other list of things. You don't have the opportunity to opt out of those and do it wrong. So
it won't work if you don't do it.
Yeah, it makes your initial implementation require a lot more effort, but it means that once that thing is working, it's a much better implementation than it would be otherwise.
Senators, any questions? There's a lot that's been going over the air here. So
I don't know where to.
Marv's got a cryptography background. I don't know if you guys know this, Marv. Did you give him any kind of a background on who you are besides just being a senator from Idaho?
Nah. I fixed things somebody had mentioned a VAX before. I went to DEC when they still existed and went to VAX training, learned how to program it, all that kind of stuff. So I have a pretty good technology background. But one of the things that I'm interested in, what Bram was just talking about, was it's almost like a peer-to-peer that's step by step. And that step by step is kind of what keeps it secure.
Yeah. There's this concept of a coin, right? And it's in what's called the coin set model, that the blockchain is a secure distributed database. The semantics of that database, the thing that it's storing is you have coins, and that's all it knows, is it has coins. So a coin comes with, here's my parent, and here is the puzzle you need to solve to unlock this. Here's the rules about how this coin can be spent. And here is how much it's worth, its amount. And that is the sum total of everything in a coin. And that way, the actual rules about how you unlock it, the blockchain only really needs to worry about during validation of that specific coin. It runs through and goes, okay, can this be spent? This is the reveal of the puzzle. Here is the reveal of the solution. I'm going to run it. Yep, that does what they're saying. It makes these new coins. But yeah, everything it does, it keeps track of coins, and then coins get spent and make new coins. And the life cycle of a coin is it doesn't exist, and then it exists, and then it's gone forever. And by enforcing this as the fundamental thing that it's doing, having like rich data on the blockchain, it makes everything much more straightforward and reliable, and something you can actually reason about. The hard thing here, this is taken from Bitcoin, by the way. The hard thing here is, how do we make there be extra metadata that comes along with this? How do we enable advanced rules, right? In particular, there are two things. There's what's called covenants, which is you say, here we have this thing, and here's rules about how it can be spent, and then rules about how those can be spent, and so on, potentially in perpetuity, which sounds potentially a little scary. Has the same issues as covenants on real estate, that people can attach these weird riders to things. But here they're very opt-in instead of opt-out. If someone gets a coin, they know exactly what rules apply to it. You can't slip in a rider covenant that they don't see onto it as it's going. So you have those, and then you have what are called capabilities, which is this thing has abilities, and not just restrictions on what it do, but permissions on things it can do based on that. And it turns out something I'm very proud of, that I don't know if it's a silly hack or a profound insight, but it turns out you can enable capabilities by having covenants that kind of point backwards in time. You have this like shell around your puzzle, and that shell enforces that it has the permission that it's supposed to, and things that then talk to it verify that that shell is there, and then can say, oh, this has this permission. That's how you enable things like having a vault coin that's on chain, this like singleton that has an identity. And so things can say, I want to pay whoever owns this thing right now. And it can go to that address. And even if they have rekeyed it in the interim, or in the process of rekeying it at the time you make the payment, it still goes through, and they can finish their whole rekey process, even if it's a big, messy adversarial process. And at the end, they still have the funds that they were supposed to.
And this enables what I was talking about much better custody. So, in Bitcoin or Ethereum, you have like a set of 24 words, and that is your private key. And if anybody has that, they can just spend. In Chia, we're moving to vaults. And so you have a singleton on chain that has a puzzle. That puzzle enforces a bunch of restrictions about who can and how and when and how do you rekey. And so to make it very simple, you enroll your mobile phone as your primary spending device, but you use the secure element. So there's no private key anywhere except in a piece of hardware that costs millions of dollars to get into. But the problem with that is, what happens if you lose your phone? So we also generate you a recovery key. And this is 24 words again, but it can't spend. All it can do is start a recovery process to put a new phone in. It has a timer on it, and it says 12 hours. That's what we recommend, so that you're not asleep while somebody steals this from you. And so if you do that, and you give that to like your lawyer, and your lawyer decides the $1 billion you have in your vault is worth stealing, you're going to get notified that your lawyer decided to try to steal it from you. And so you're going to pull your phone out, and you're going to cancel that, and you're going to call the cops. But If you just need to replace your phone, you're going to wait 12 hours. And at the end of 12 hours, you're going to enroll your phone, and now you got all your funds right back working with your phone again. And so you're really separating keys from custody and control. And we're going to be adding third parties, so you can pay a U.S. bank, lowercase U.S. bank, to like $10 a month for virtual safe deposit services. And so if you die, your executor can go to the bank and say, hey, I need to recover this vault. And they make you prove that you really are the executor. And when they do that, they ask the executor, okay, what mobile phone do you want to send it to?
Wow.
Thank you, guys.
Senator Fincham got ripped off in one of these.
Thanks for thinking of real use situations. That's, for me, the Gen Z, Gen X folks, they're probably all right in the middle of crypto. My generation, crypto is like, that's way past me. I don't want to deal with it. But I think we're going to come to the point where we're all going to have to, and we need to make the use of crypto kind of a natural thing for everyone, regardless of generation.
Oh, yeah. I am always wanting to work on self-custody technology. Well, because keeping track of the money and not losing it, that's like job one of smart money, right? And like when people are using a bank, the bank is enforcing business logic about things getting pulled back and stuff, which makes their thing more secure. Now it's done with no transparency or end user control, and they're charging way too much for this, but they are doing it, right? Where like with Bitcoin, it kind of feels more like you're carrying around suitcases full of $100 bills. Where in principle on a blockchain, you should be able to do this much, much better. So we have our enterprise wallet that has an implementation of this now that's doing basic multi-sig. And we have plans to build something that's much more sophisticated with clawback periods and such in the future. That's like really, really secure and really usable on top of that. That's appropriate for people like, a non-technical company to be custodying millions of dollars in cash in it, right? So they don't have to, pay the fees to the bank for that happening. And I'm always very happy to be working on that. The problem is it's really not very sexy because it's not promising, financial returns. And so people get kind of bored of it. But I get excited working on it. I think it's job one.
Yeah, and most people, their number one threat is losing. Like they're going to lose their device. The device is going to get corrupted. It goes out in the fire. So you solve that one first. The next one is, fundamentally like secession, right? And it's like, okay, have a recovery key, and you have multiple recovery keys. So you get one to your ex-wife because you don't have to trust her. You put one in your will. And if all of a sudden you get an alert, you're like, okay, somebody stole my will. I'm going to cancel that. We're going to rewrite the will. Like, again, basic controls and ease. But then you finally get down to wrench attacks. What happens when somebody brings a $10 pipe wrench and tells you to spend the money? And that's where things like clawbacks and kind of quorum become interesting. One of the obvious things we're going to do is that, you got your mobile phone and it's your day-to-day spending key. It's the thing that sells a little Tesla and buys a little Starbucks, right? But, you're going to sit on Microsoft and Apple dividend certificates for a decade. So you buy a used iPad, you use that as an offline signer that your phone's aware of. So, when you get a request to spend, it'll come down to your phone that's online. It'll pop a QR code. You'll pull up your other device. You will make sure that you're signing what you think you're signing. You'll do it. It'll submit it to the chain and it's done. And so now, somebody steals it in the bar and forces you to spend the walking around money. Sucks. But they can't get, because you're not with it, the other key that it actually stores equivalent to your brokerage firm account, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out from a business logic standpoint, you're kind of balancing. You always want to recover it, but you don't want it to be trivial to steal everything. So you need to make it so that any key can do a recovery, but it just might take a really long time. And their attempts to do that can be canceled by other things. So if like the one very last key that you gave to your least trusted friend is the only one that's still around because it's like 20 years later and you died unexpectedly and they're honestly trying to get access to your estate, they can do it. It just might take a year, but that's okay because all the other keys are gone. So they'll get it after a year.
Incredible.
It's also important to note that one of the things we've really kind of solved for is there's this tension on most blockchains about being ready to trade and being secure. So, you got it out in your ledger, and so you're going to be sitting there dialing in the little 6 digits, but the trade wants to happen right now. Where did I go? I got to do an OS upgrade, versus, here what we built is an environment where you go, hey, I want to do this trade. I'm going to go to vault.chia.net. I'm going to type in the trade. I'm going to hit a button. I'm going to get a push notification to my phone, and I'm going to review it, because that's the other thing is people are trying to make you sign things you don't think you should be signing. But now it's really easy because I've got a real screen, not a one-line thing. And I go, yeah, trade. And now immediately I put out an offer file to be able to go, make this trade to buy Apple dividend certificate. And I've not missed the price. I've been able to have that level of security while still being able to trade right now.
Yeah, Senator Fincham in Arizona had an issue with a brokerage firm not a brokerage firm, it was crypto, right? Which was
platform. Coinbase, and quite frankly, Coinbase was very helpful. There wasn't much they could do, but they were able to track. In fact, they also worked with an outfit. I think it's Zero Horizon, maybe. And they tracked a theft out of my account that was significant, 5 figures. And they were able to flag the hash of where the wallet, where the money is, as stolen. But beyond that, there's no way to recover it. So I'm particularly interested in this conversation around clawback. And one of the things that I brought up to the gentleman at Coinbase, and like I say, they were very helpful. Their concierge team, I can't compliment
They were kind.
them enough.
They weren't helpful, Mark. They were kind.
All right, they were kind.
Helpful would have gotten your money back.
Okay,
Kind is understanding and saying, sorry, you got robbed.
Yeah, that's a fair difference. So they were kind. But some of the feedback that I gave them, and I hear this in the conversation. I now have 2-factor authentication. So if anything is going to move out of my account, whoever has to be able to find that other device, which they have no idea what it is, flash the QR code and be able to proceed with the transaction. One of the suggestions I gave them was, look, you've already got a technology in place with most of the banks and credit unions. When there is a transaction that is initiated, in fact, this happened to me this weekend. Transaction is initiated because I was buying a specific kind of physical therapy tape. They're like, this is kind of out of the ordinary for your transaction type. They texted me and said, if this is legit, tell us yes. If it isn't, tell us no. Well, I put in yes, and they said, okay, transaction's been approved. You can resubmit it in 30 seconds if it doesn't go through. And I explained he got it right away. I said, it would be really nice if you set a threshold of, let's just say $250 in value, anything that's coming out of your account. You don't care so much about coming in, but anything that's going out of your account, if it breaches that $250, that you text the individual, because you got all the information that you need, and say, please verify that you initiated this transaction. If that had been in place, I would have been able to stop the transaction before it ever started. Now,
so are you guys saying with Chia that we could have done that? That he could have?
Yeah. So your key is not. So it's Coinbase. The private key is in Coinbase's server, but with vault.chia.net, the private key is on your phone. So all you use vault.chia.net is as a user interface to say, hey, I want to sign something. And then it forwards it to your phone for you to make the ultimate decision that goes, I recognize this. I meant to do it. You are going to have some automated things once in a while. So you're talking about coming in. If you want a bunch of dividend certificates and you're investing for cash flow and you get a dividend, you may want to automatically reinvest. And so it would not surprise you to get a push notification from your wallet going, hey, a bunch of cash came in. Do you want to reinvest per the rules you told me? And so you can see that and go, yes. But usually you're going to be on the website going, sign something. and waiting and going, okay, it's now here. Do I want to sign it?
Right.
I want to sign
Right.
it.
So
This should all.
the point of what I was trying to make is anything that's outbound. I'm not so much.
Well, a sign is an outbound. In other words, you're saying I'm going to spin this. I'm going to create an offer. I'm going to send it out to somebody. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So the whole point is you can't sign that transaction without having the device that has the private key embedded in hardware on it in your hand.
But it's also
Bram, you were going to say something.
But it's also staying within that ecosystem. It's not going out someplace else. As you're reinvesting that what is it?
Dividend certificate.
Dividend certificate.
Yeah.
You're reinvesting.
You're going
a whole
out.
different story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you're going out and saying, hey, I want to give $50 for a Microsoft dividend certificate again. Right. And to do that, you still have to sign. Like you create a partial coin spin, which is what we're going to talk about. And you need to sign it because the taker needs to know that if he correctly creates the puzzle and puts the Microsoft DC in, that it's now a valid transaction when he signs it and puts it on chain.
Yeah. I love that idea.
From a custody perspective is that unless you have control of that device, nobody's signing anything.
The principle is that there should be end user control. You should be able to set policies about what transactions automatically go through and you just get notified, what transactions have to go through immediate approval in real time as you do them. Those are things that you should be able to set the policies for, and it should follow it, not just whatever your bank feels like doing in their fraud detection department.
Yeah, because we're going to make it so that, for example, you may set up your own personal vault to say, hey, I won't allow myself to spend anything more than $250 without this other device as well. Or, one of the things we're going to do on the client side is, hey, if I'm in a geofence, which is my home or my office, then all I have to do is Face ID. But if I'm not, I need an extra passphrase because I'm worried about being wrench attacked and I want to have this hidden extra element so I can make it look like I spent it, but I didn't actually spend it when I'm not at my home or my office.
Mm-hmm.
But those things should be your configurable.
Yeah, and I can also see under Bram's what he's talking about. You can also set up internally an automated. So, for example, I have a dividend certificate that's coming up, and I can set up a rule within my environment that it really doesn't even ask me.
You still want it to ask you because you don't necessarily want to sign something in a forward basis. Where you do want to do that is like if you're making a market, you'll like delegate some funds to a market making robot, but still that private key has to now live somewhere. Right.
Okay.
And that's okay. But you don't really want to do your wallet, in the broadest sense, like your brokerage account plus your bank account in your pocket.
Right.
You do want to make sure you're authorizing just the minimum amount of authorization to do what you want to do.
Right, but you can set rules in advance. I am expecting this, so go ahead and sign it. Like this happens all the time for like recurring payments and stuff. But you want it to be that it's like, okay, I have this recurring payment set up. It's going to happen at some point. You go, I don't want it to happen anymore in the future, and you set that locally, and you're not proactively notifying the other side that you canceled the recurring payment.
Yeah, so Vault.Chia.net's kind of serving two big customer bases. One is just end users like you and me. And so that's got a whole kind of set of like, features does that need? But the real target is for folks like CItadel, who's one of the market makers for Permuto, to be able to set up vaults of vaults. So in other words, each employee has a vault, and it might take 3 out of 5 employees to move money from the cold wallet to the trading wallet today. And that all comes through on a push notification. They're expecting it. They can tell that it, was set off by the treasurer, and I'm the controller, and I'm going, yep, this is this morning's loading of the market making wallet. Click. So, totally different sets of controls ultimately. But the thing is, Vault.Chia.net is there as a orchestrator to be able to pull together those 3 or 5. It knows, how to email you, how to push notify you, request you to do it. You get the request. Good principles. You log in to make sure matches, right? Yep. Okay. There's not been a man in the middle. And then you go, okay, sign. And then it goes, okay, I now have 3 of the 5 I need. I don't need to wait for the other 2 people. I'll put that on chain for you.
So I think this is from a policymaker perspective, this is kind of in the bucket of stuff that needs to happen for state treasurers to really
yeah,
embrace okay, how do we manage this? Because I think Marv probably agree with me. When it comes to the policy making things that we do, the treasurer, being an executive branch office, essentially is bound by what the legislature tells the treasurer to do. Now, of course, the treasurer is going to push back and say, well, we don't believe that this is a secure enough environment. We would rather not place the state's ducats, if you will, at risk. So in having these kinds of things now in play, I think it begins to raise the bar for state treasurers on, okay, are we secure enough yet that we feel like we can take, yep, we just hit that point where we now feel comfortable with entering into that. Marv, you got a comment on that?
No, I agree. And I think that the fact that you can set ground rules like you're talking about, to have 2-person or 3-person or 4-person authenticity, or authorization for those transactions, that is, I mean, that's key for government trust. And I think one of the things that I know our treasurer had struggled with, is ensuring that the tax dollars are safe, and moving those around. I mean, all treasurers invest your tax dollars as they come in. They're trying to maximize the amount of return that they can get off of those tax dollars to pay the bills. And something like this would provide a very convenient tool to help them invest those things without paying the overheads that they're paying now.
Well, I think it also contributes to internal oversight. So, for example, I love the idea of you've got to have 2, maybe even 3 people sign off on it before something can proceed through the system. Doing that electronically, I DocuSign. Sorry, that is old technology that's easily hacked. Having something like this, where you're able to say, okay, I need to have the treasurer, the treasurer's auditor, and maybe the comptroller all sign off on a transaction at a certain level. That's huge.
Yeah,
that really helps with the whole oversight and auditor general piece that they always have to be worried about.
When Bram and I were working on, invent new math here, the real goal of all of this was to build something that can actually work for a real application. And, honestly, most businesses don't have the set of controls that we're currently saying, hey, look, for inexpensively, we can give you that set of controls. And, right now, Wall Street uses Bank of New York and US Bank and a couple others, and literally almost all of Wall Street assets sit there because even they don't want to custody them. But, we're actually putting forward a system where you really could, as an investment bank, as a financial institution, save that 20, 40, 50 basis points, because you can have an internal quorum. When somebody loses their phone or it's iPhone upgrade season, you don't care because they just do that recovery process I told you. Or your backup is the chief security officer in case something really goes wrong. And so he can rekey that person out because you fired him. It's all of those day-to-day control and custody that all of a sudden we've made probably one of the most secure systems out there. Like when I actually look around at custody and control systems, the only one I know that's as good or better is the one that's used to manage nuclear football.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it turns out usability is a really big deal here. That most of the failures of security systems happen because people bypass them under normal course of things just out of convenience. So how do you make it so that you have this secure custody system where the business logic, I cringe at that because the people who say the word all the time are the douchiest people in existence, but that really is what's going on here. You have business logic that needs to be understood by these not super technical people using it and effectively work through some fairly complicated scenarios without getting their stuff stolen. So yeah, kind of really interesting working through what is a set of business logic rules that is understandable so these people can program and use it themselves.
Where are you guys going next? I mean, how do you scale this into bigger world?
Well, so first we had to invent our best customer, and that is Permuto. Wall Street is interested. I will tell you, when we went out and tested the waters for this product, that they were like, wow. And I understand why. Like, Citadel, GTS look at this and go, so I can sell Microsoft short and buy it long on the blockchain and be settled in 5 minutes and have complete compliance with my lending rules. That's exciting. So, by going out and building a better financial product, and we think that the Permuto AC and DC trusts for the first 100 kind of global 100, if you will, is going to create a new base unit of investing. And it's also going to drive things like securitizations from names, and they're going to put those securitizations on the chain because they're going to save 50% annual fee and make that much more dividend yield, right? And these words I'm saying are not what you hear from crypto people. I'm talking about significantly increasing the market share, the security of that market, and decreasing its costs at a level that Wall Street has to pay attention to. So our view is that between gaming and Permuto, we're going to be able to show a set of rails that show you how real humans can have more security, less cost, more trust. I mean, look, everybody talks about how trustworthy our banks and our credit institutions are. I've been on the liquidation committee of a brokerage firm. I remember the days in 2008, it wasn't clear that even SIPC could back the amount of securities that was going to have to be found to back. And, Silicon Valley Bank was great until it wasn't. So, being able to take those systemic risks away and make it so that you really can have self-custody and not worry about, like, does my wife know how to recover this if I get hit by a bus? Solve that problem completely. Today, if you back up your 24 words in Bitcoin, you stamp them in metal, and is the metal, high enough temperature that the house fire doesn't melt it? Like, these are scary questions you have to ask yourself. Chia, you don't have to ask that question anymore. It is, look, the house is burning down. I don't care. My lawyer has a copy of my keys. I'll rekey tomorrow.
This is fascinating. I did want to come back to one question about the clawback, and if it's not the same as a chargeback, but maybe it is. If somebody makes a charge by card and I say, no, not so, then my bank goes and talks to them, that whoever took the money, and decides whether that was fraudulent or not. And then they come back to me and say, well, it looks like you did, or it looks like you didn't, and they refund the money right away, but then they might take the money back if it looks like it was. Who's arbitrating this on the Chia side if there's a charge or a clawback?
Yeah, there's two things going on here. A clawback is really to stop typos and to stop a rogue from getting away with your money in a way that you can't stop. So, if somebody stole enough keys, you have it so that, like, it still takes like 3 keys to spend it, but any one of the 5 can claw it back immediately. And so it makes it very hard for, like, a team of operatives to go steal 3 people, because even if they do, they've got to, like, hold you for 30 days. Like, these are things that, those sorts of folks don't want to do. But the base clawback is very simple. Like, right now, Vitalik says if you want to send an Ethereum transaction, you should send a 10-cent transaction and then send the rest of it. We think that's silly. We think you should send something with like an hour-long clawback on it, and you send it, and you text your buddy and go, does it look like it's coming? And he goes, yep. And you can either accelerate it right now, or you wait the hour and it's now in his wallet. There are another class of things we can do around arbitration. So not necessarily for like just a simple payment, but like imagine you're a semiconductor company trading with a PC manufacturer. You could set an arbitrator in a clawback window so that, when the goods arrive, you pay, but there's now like a 30-day window during which either of you could approach the arbitrator and dispute. And you've already pre-selected your, AAA arbitrator, and that arbitrator now has control and custody during that period. And they can make a decision on, whether that gets split, goes all the way back. But we're making it explicit about who the arbitrator is.
Yeah, there's this chargeback detection and such that credit card companies are doing. There's real value in that, but that's something that should be explicitly opted into by the endpoint and charged appropriately, not something that just happens because you have to, because that's the only way to send any money to anybody.
Yeah, one of the things we're looking forward to do later is arbitrated prediction markets. Some prediction markets are pretty easy, like, who won the game, right? But like, do the Republicans control the House in April of 2026 is actually a much more complicated question than it looks like on the surface. because it's like, did they keep it because there's non-Republicans that are considered in the majority? And so, having a prediction contract that has a known arbitrator, think retired federal judge, that if there is a dispute, you actually have a real process to go figure out who should have won the prediction contract.
Oh, yeah. The cute thing there is if you're doing a complex prediction contract, you don't necessarily want to have an oracle, because if you have an oracle, the oracle is committing a priori to research and decide everything in the end, which could be quite a lot of expense to do potentially, and also might just be way too many things. All the things people might want to make bespoke futures about are beyond what an oracle could do. So I have this plan to have an arbitrator where once a contract expires, and it should go one way or the other, the parties can just say, okay, you win. Or if there's a dispute, then the parties can then post the funds for the arbitrator, and then the arbitrator steps in and does their research and makes the decision. And then only the side that lost actually is the one that pays the arbitrator in that event. So there's a little bit of subtle business logic stuff going on in there, but I think I have it all worked out where it's actually quite useful.
It's kind of fun as an arbitrator because most of these contracts, you'll get a very small piece and nothing will happen because it's pretty obvious what the outcome was.
What's your timing on getting this all into the market, Bram? You say you're working on this.
Unfortunately for the arbitration stuff, I've worked out the system, but it's on the list of stuff we'd really like to do, but not our immediate roadmap. We have much more. In terms of stuff that we're working on right this minute, it's basically Permuto and Gaming are the two big projects, and then also new proofs of space that I mentioned, but that's not an end user project. We have ongoing development of those planned in the future. And then we're planning on working on this advanced vaults stuff that I was talking about, and building a payment channel network off of gaming. So we want to make it so that there is a peer-to-peer trading of the Permuto assets that happens in real time between many different counterparties with an absolute minimum possible of hitting the chain. So those are our immediate projects. As we get more successful in the future and have more resources, we really want to build out an arbitration network and all kinds of other stuff.
But we already have things like American options available, and so you're going to see that market step up, especially once you get the Permuto assets slowly but surely on chain.
So there's not a reward system. I love Dash and I love Zcash, because I think they were very smart to take a percentage of staking rewards, 20% in both cases, mining for Zcash, but they actually have funding. They actually have money to run operations. Ripple, as much as I'm not a fan, sorry, Mark, because I think it's so centralized, they do have a massive war chest, and they sell coins and they spend money to expand Ripple. What pays the bills and keeps Bram's lights on so that he can continue to write code?
So two things. Obviously we've had a large amount of private investment over the years. Right now we had a pre-farm with 21 million coins, and we're doing something much smaller than Ripple, but similar to Ripple, by continuing to fund operations with small amounts of XCH sales. You can also buy directly from us using ACH in America, just because our U.S. Centralized exchange listing situation isn't beautiful, but it's much easier to just grab it at market price and pay no fees direct from us. But the big piece is that Permuto is a big revenue generating beast, and we're going to roll up that 100% to the top line here. So that's why we're very focused on getting that out. And so, if you want to buy some XCH in the United States, go to vault.chia.net, set a vault up.
There's right there on the page.
XCH button right there on the bottom left.
Yeah, we have this plan. We have this plan to make more money off of our Chia sales, where we launch gaming, and the way you do gaming is you're playing for Chia, so people will buy Chia to play for it, which will increase the price of Chia. That's the plan.
Yeah, look, long term, a base level 1 coin is worth the demand annually for secure access to layer 1. if you think about it. There's a certain amount of transactions that can happen on the blockchain natively. And so when you build demand for high value transactions, you're building value. And it's a good old fashioned piece of, business analytics to know what that looks like. So we're right at the cusp of driving a tremendous amount of demand, paying billions of dividend dollars on chain every quarter moving forward for the top 100 companies around the world. Having real poker players want to play every night to play poker against their best buddy and, bring another $5,000 in. This is where we see real value because you're using a blockchain to be able to invest, to secure your investment, to be able to play for real money with strategic friends. It's a very different kind of set of tools, and that's going to drive that demand. And then ultimately, you're going to make a price decision. If you're buying a cup of coffee for $8, there's no way you want to spend the money to get into the L1 blockchain. But that's where those payment channels come in. Now, if you're buying a house, you really are happy to spend $10 to make sure that that house swap for cash versus title happens on your layer 1 blockchain.
But to be clear, in the gaming, you're not the casino, and you're not taking a rake. Where's the income other than people buying the Chia coin and maybe directly from Vault Chia?
No, that is it. Actually,
that is it.
That is really
well. There's one other small piece, which is that's block demand, and block demand means that the farmer makes that block demand. So to get into the block, it's not going to be free right now. Kind of is, and once that happens, you start to see a good competitive market for who wants access to layer 1 blocks.
Oh, yeah. You have, there's a market for block space, right? For people putting through transactions. Right now, the fees are extremely low because the blocks aren't full. You have to be careful when you're doing anything that actually uses the blockchain because it's very, very easy if you're doing it badly to completely blow through the available capacity on the network. This is a super, super secure thing. There's no way you're just going to crank the numbers until it has the same kind of throughput on chain as like Visa's doing. That would be ridiculous. Ethereum made utterly delusional claims they were going to do that in years past. They cranked the numbers as much as they could. It wound up being like double what Bitcoin had to begin with. So that's not how you do it. You try and keep things off chain as much as possible. So the amount of on-chain transactions that's happening from gaming is going to be as small as we can get it. But it's still the case that if you start getting into the like millions of sessions per day, it actually fills blocks just on its own. And that makes it so people are going to have to start paying money to start a session, which is going to create transaction fees. And that does flow. Those fees do flow to farmers. That is money going into the system. Probably not in the very short term. Pumping, like if that's happening, the amount of price pump to the cost of Chia that's going to be happening from people buying the Chia to game for it is going to be probably quite a bit bigger than what's happening from the transaction fees at that point. That is another thing that's happening, and it's healthy for the ecosystem for blocks actually to be full and for there to be some kind of transaction fee to make something go through.
Okay, and so this all brings me back to the root of my question, which is shout out to the Tang Gang. I love you guys. Really, I love you guys. You're amazing. Okay, and so you have this huge group of fans, the Tang Gang out there, and they are just loving you guys and just absolutely excited. I was in a space last night, and one of them brought up, we were talking about the price of Chia and how the price isn't where it should be. We believe it should be much higher. Obviously, now I'm even more excited because you're adding this gaming element on top of the digital transactions of equities, which I already was mind blown about. Is it possible that having to sell Chia now in the market in order to cover costs will evaporate at some point here, where you do have positive cash flow and you really don't need to sell a lot of Chia? And so 2 questions then. What then will you do with your big treasury if you're not having to sell to cover costs? And number 2, do you think that there's any drag on the price currently that will go away?
So I think there's a perceptive drag, but there's not an actual drag. We are less than 2% of the daily volume, right? So, a 2% daily volume person isn't going to be really.
That's not going to move anything. Okay.
But more importantly, ACH has already grown faster than we thought it would, and we're already decreasing the amount we sell on centralized exchanges by kind of dollar for dollar what people are buying directly. And I actually think it's net new buyers. I think Americans have had a very hard time buying Chia in any size. And so you've got people DCAing right now on ACH that would not have been in the market otherwise. So the initial step is that we start to lower slowly but surely what we sell via our market maker. The big step is that Permuto's annual revenue pass-through is a significant chunk of change. And there's also a significant kind of re-earn of a lot of the costs on the other side of the JV on a cash basis. So as that happens, I think we get to a place where we don't have to sell Chia at all. And in fact, if anything, we turn around and whatever we sold on ACH today, we buy via the market maker tomorrow to keep the ACH wallet full, right?
That's
but ultimately,
a thought that already went through my head. Yeah.
Yeah, ultimately, we're going to bring that S1 back around. The one thing it is waiting for is the revenue from Permuto. And with that, we think that the way people are going to value Chia Network Inc., the company that supports all this, is going to be pre-farm and whatever number you put on what you think the pre-farm is going to do over time, plus a DCF of real revenue and profit coming from Permuto and other customers. The World Bank. We have a couple other customers who can't talk about just yet because they're actually building interesting applications and they want to launch those. But it is a Red Hat style software company on top of a large treasury of XCH.
And Red Hat did very, very well.
Right.
They were acquired for tens of billions of dollars. You all, you're private now. Do you see an IPO in the future?
We absolutely do. And as I said, you could see our most recent S1 on the Crypto Task Force website. So we are primed and ready and just need the revenue to start from Permuto. We were hoping that was last September, but we got a little bit of a curveball, as I said.
Could you see doing your IPO on the Chia blockchain? Sorry, Bram.
We kind of want to be one of the last companies who does it the old-fashioned way.
Okay.
There is a process we're building here where you don't need to do the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ anymore. But I think what we're looking to do is actually go to a lot of late-stage private firms, venture back, especially around their need to get liquidity for their employees, because there's a real ability to use the open outcry market to create a real price there. And you can imagine a future process where you kind of back into being public. You did an offering for your employees, there's some trading, you have a price. And so you kind of do a direct listing. And now you have a choice of whether you want to do that direct listing also on a national traditional exchange or just on the Chia blockchain.
Bram, I cut you off. I apologize.
Yeah, technically each Permuto entity does its own IPO is how it works, but we're really talking about Chia Network Inc. doing an IPO after a few of those have gone through.
Yeah, and of course I could see you guys also, and I think I talked to you about this last time, Gene, that most early investment gets washed out, you get diluted out. If you go onto Angel List and you're an early investor, chances are that you're locked up for up to 10 years. And what a lot of people don't know is even well-funded companies, 85% of them fail. They do. They fail, they get washed out, they get rolled up, something happens that isn't good for the initial investor. But in that A round, B round, C round, after that angel round, there's a lot of hope and upside, but there's no way to get out. Could you see Chia absorbing some of those early, not yet public companies and allowing people to start trading that equity?
Look, over the next 5 to 10 years, I want to see the NVCA core documents change to be that, based on certain metrics, some portion of earlier equity unlocks. If you've ever done a private deal, you know what these kind of look like. And the idea is that, if you're doing a D round and the company's doing 100 million in annual revenue, you should be able to let the pre-seed seed folks get 10% liquidity, right? And even founders in the same sort of situation, because we do have this now, decade-long slog. It used to be that most companies were done in a decade from a venture perspective, done either public or sold, right? Now, 15 years on SaaS is not that long anymore.
There's this bizarre, bimodal thing right now. Either you try to get a properly regulated exit via an IPO, which is very, very difficult to do at this point and really involves a lot of lockups, or you do an ICO with zero regulation or accountability, and whether these are legal is another question, but people are doing them. Or you do an ICO and you just dump everything day one, and often people just don't bother having any operations after they've unloaded everything from the ICO. And it's like, wait, no. Maybe the regulations should try and move people from the ICOs to the IPOs, because this is not good.
No, it's not good. It's not good. We saw what they said, 4 billion was raised in the EOS. I think it was really just $1 billion changing hands from one to the other, but then it evaporated. And I don't know what anybody was except extra liquidity. I could be wrong, but But yeah, and again, 85% of businesses do fail. They don't make it across the finish line, and those are funded companies. But along the way, there were people that worked hard that could have stepped off.
Right. Yeah. There's a, so from a moral standpoint, right? You don't want people taking what might or might not be a real business and just using it as a marketing shtick to unload money and disappear. Like that's bad. You don't want that happening. But at the same time, it's kind of wrong that founders, and I can say this from experience, often have put years into something, building real equity, and are just 100% locked up. Sometimes even locked up. Well, yeah, long past the point where later investors are not locked up anymore. It's like, come on, there has to be some amount of liquidity for these people.
100%.
Well, it also harms the entire ecosystem because you've got a whole bunch of like angels who are now illiquid and they can't do new deals because they're not even getting their principal back, right? You know, there are real opportunities here to fix some of it.
That's the thing that gets me is that this, I call it adventure capital. These angels, they're taking the biggest chance when something's still paid, probably even on paper. They're putting up money to make sure that the engineers and the team, they can get it done. But then these are the people that you want to have money because they're feeding an ecosystem of new ideas. But if their money is locked up for 10 years, what if they could be out through a Chia setup in a year or two, make 5x, 10x on their money, and now they're going to feed the ecosystem 5x or 10x more. And these people are more rare than you think.
It was very much our intent to go do these blue chip stocks first, because you know there's a piece of skepticism at your venture capital lawyer, your VC partner of, wait, can I really get liquidity? I've heard all these bad secondary market things. Do these work? Going to them and saying you're going to trade next to Microsoft, Broadcom, Nvidia, Apple, IBM, you name it, and it's working, and they can see a liquid, deep, real, I'm going to put the word air quotes around public because it's not necessarily that these things are public. You know, the Permuto ones are all registered, but the thing is you can actually trade unregistered securities as long as you're careful about how. And the Chia blockchain lets you create a market in, say, Stripe that you couldn't just do today any other way.
I love it. Now I'm going to, because I've got you guys for 14 more minutes, and on a holiday weekend, God bless you guys for being here. Really. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been great.
Our pleasure.
Amazing. I have one question. Yeah,
John, speaking of the holiday weekend, gentlemen, we engaged in a little experiment a couple of weeks ago. And I'm very pleased to tell you that we delivered a check for $1,000 to the Paulden Food Bank in Yavapai County. It's a very rural, very impoverished area.
$1,000 of turkeys is a lot of turkeys.
Yeah, $1,000 worth.
Cranberry sauce.
We did that. We did that through Dash. I would love to do something.
Shout out to Joel.
The crypto community really stepped up. We were short of $1,000, and I topped it off. But we want to do something for Christmas as well. So put your thinking caps on. These rural communities really need help.
So we actually did something many years back called Marmot Coin, where basically you had to prove that you had donated to the Marmot Foundation or an equivalent in your region, because we have people all over the world. And Marmot Coin is one of the most valuable coins on the Chia network, and all those donations have gone to the Marmot Recovery Foundation in Vancouver. Certainly something we can do to change that target and do something fun for Christmas.
That's really cool. So, well,
Let's
thank you for
do it.
letting me get that out. I wanted to thank
let's do that.
the
Let's
crypto
use
community for doing that, because it was one of those in the moment harebrained ideas that come up on this show, and look at what it did. So
proof of charity is a good thing.
Shout out to everybody in the Dash community that gave that $1,000. You fed people for Thanksgiving. So
that's true.
Big thanks. Not just to Joel, not just to Dash, but the people that actually put in that money. Thank you so much. You guys fed people that were in need. I want to be a little bit focused just for the end here on what we're doing and how we want to work with Chia. specifically on this fund. So we have 3 funds that we're raising, and we're going to be raising them statewide through money managers, not VC, not family offices and that. I'm looking for the boomers and the Gen Xer money that can then stay in the ecosystem. When they pass away, their kids will inherit it, not some family office that's already got $40 billion and now they've got $44 billion or something. Those funds we want them to be managed on Chia. So when I say these funds, it's a special purpose vehicle. It means that we are going to take investment in from accredited, in this case, it'll be from the money managers, not from the individuals, but the people managing that money. We want to put that on Chia so that those tokens that represent the funds, and it'll work like this. The first one is $1 billion, $200 million that comes in will go out to support the coins, Chia being one of these, that we want to see grow adoption, transactions, transaction value, developer ecosystem, and their security score. That money, you guys have some spend because you have a treasury. Most don't. Most don't have any money at all. And so one way that our fund can win, if we're going to be buying up the other, it would be $800 million worth of these coins and locking them for 10 years. Nobody can touch those. At the end, they'll be distributed to the token owners. But those tokens, can you guys do accreditation checks? Can you guys do KYC AML? Can you guys actually take in the funds for us so that we can then deploy them and even help us deploy them to buy up those coins, lock them up? They need multi-sig. They need to be kept in a place that's absolutely safe for the people that own the underlying coins. And I differentiate coin from token, being a coin is an actual blockchain like Chia. A token is something built on top of an actual blockchain. Can you guys literally soup to nuts help us cover all of that? And then as we get our management fee, which is after a year and a day, those tokens are tradable. And after the management fee is taken out, let's say I had 1 token. Well, I pay the management fee, but if there's any profit, our fund actually, this is where I make money, we make 20%. It's the 2 and 20 model, right? But instead of waiting 10 years and then the fund is liquidated and I get my 20%, no, me and my team will get our 20% after a year and a day for anyone that trades. And every time it's traded at a profit, we get ours. And that would be great if that could go over into another bucket that you guys help us manage. How much of what I just said can Chia help us do?
Most of it. So there's some devils in the details about exactly what you want to automate versus what you want to be able to just manage in a kind of multi-sig environment. But fundamentally, opening a fund, I would say you're still going to need to be able to take the fiat to the extent people send fiat to you, right? But the onboarding of an end user into a vault, they don't know it's a vault from their point of view. It's like your website, and giving them the ability to then, have, for example, that time lock, the 1-year hold can be fully automated. Royalties is kind of what you're talking about future transfers. That takes a little more. We should talk through that on that particular detail. But fund structure and building a fund that's managed by a vault, multiple vaults, so for example, in Permuto, there's going to be like a 3 of 5 that issues dividend certificates. So like when we get a Microsoft share in, it's going to require 3 signatures to do today's issuance of all of the Microsoft DC and ACs, right? So we can absolutely do those kinds of things for you quite easily. The only requirement at all really is that the asset needs to be able to be available natively on the Chia blockchain, but there are bridges from Base and Ethereum to make that relatively straightforward.
Okay, and KYC, AML, and accreditation checks, is that something
That's something we can help you set up and use, and it's inexpensive and off the cuff, right? Like this is just stuff that works. We on the Permuto side, we're registering, so don't have as much of that per se, because as a registrant, a lot of those rules kind of fall to the wayside as they should. But we're also doing things Permuto that are 506C or 506Bs, where we do want to have the are you accredited? Do we have your KYC information? And we want to give you fundamentally a verifiable credential so that you can present that when you're trading, so that you can even restrict trading to other accrediteds only, for example.
Let me make sure I just understood that, because what it sounded like to me is that if I go to Charles Schwab and I buy an equity, I don't have to be accredited to do that. I can go buy an equity and I can buy and sell that equity as often as I want on E-Trade or Ameritrade or whatever. So are you saying that we wouldn't be held to the cap of the SPV of 1,000 US, unlimited outside the US, but could actually just allow people to come in and trade without being accredited?
No, you'd have to register. That's the difference, right? So for the Permuto Trust, we're going S1 moving to S6. It's full registration, and therefore those rules fall aside. But I'm saying for if you want to do a SPV, you're still limited to your shareholder account, but we can make it pretty automatic that like when you want to make an offer, that offer can't settle unless the other side has a verifiable credential that they are an accredited or a non-US. And so that way you can keep your cap, for example, by saying, hey, only 1,000 VCs of US origin can own this, but unlimited people who can prove they're not US can buy it too.
Amazing. That just takes all the work off my plate, like almost all of it.
Yeah, look, if you have a financial product that's going to have a relatively diverse group of investors, we've made it really easy to be able to onboard them. All they need is a mobile phone. Right this second, they need an iPhone, but any minute now we'll have our Android version out too. And at that point, it's like everybody's got a phone. That's all you need. You enroll them on your website using fundamentally a like reskinned version of Cloud Wallet. So what you see at vault.chia.net, you would make look like you want it to look. For example, at Permuto, we're not going to say USDC, we're going to say cash because it's simpler for people to understand what the heck that is. If you're a crypto head, you want to know it's USDC. That's the vault.chia.net interface instead.
Okay. Well, Bram and Gene, I'm going to give you guys each the last word here. What would you like to tell the audience at all about Chia, Bram?
I would like to say that gaming is going to be out very, very soon, and it's going to be super fun.
And look, I think Permuto is going to demonstrate to everybody that you have a real, actual public global market that is accessible by anybody with a low threshold to get in, as long as you're following your local, regional regulatory environment. We'll make that easy. You're going to be able to build products and trade and issue assets and really build a global one market on the Chia blockchain.
Senators, any questions or comments on the way out the door?
Well, I just want to say how easy it is. Just while we've been talking the last 5 minutes, I now have 16.75041887 XCH.
Yeah.
By the way, those are in clawback, so they're in your wallet, but we can take them back if your bank doesn't send us the money
For 12 hours.
Once the bank sends us that money, we actually push it on through.
Yeah. So I want to comment on I set it for 12 hours. Well, it's actually defaulted to 12 hours.
Yeah, we recommend 12, but you can set it to whatever you want.
This is great. I love it. The only thing, and going back to the feedback that I provided earlier, on the outbound, if I ever go to trade this, having that thing that says, did you do this?
Well, so if you want to send me some Chia,
clicking yes. Yeah.
So after the clawback's over and you wanted to send me some Chia, the way you would do it is you get my address and you'd go back to Vault and you'd see, send Chia, and you put the address in. When you hit submit, your phone's going to pop up. It's not going to send it because the phone's required to sign that transaction. And so you're going to look at your phone and you go, is the address the same? Yeah.
Right.
Submit.
So if a nefarious actor tries to send that,
you're going to get a phone
notification. It's going to pop up on my phone.
Correct.
And they won't even know that, other than they know the system. They'll know that my phone popped something up.
Yep. That's it.
Brother, this is exactly what I was asking for.
Yeah. This is the system you want.
Yes. All right. Problem solved.
And the funny thing is,
go ahead.
While Mark was doing that, I was doing the exact same thing. And so we are both in sync. We're trying to, I think Mark and I are really trying to look out for the citizens of our states and just citizens in general. We've got to come up with a method where this stuff is like usable and simple to use and is like the next check, right? Remember when, maybe I wasn't old enough to remember when we started using checks, but there was a time when we transitioned from using $1, we could also start to use a check. And then there was a time when we started using credit cards. And I think this is, we're looking for that next step. And I think this is the next step. So thank you guys. This is
the
great.
Two big light bulbs are using a vault that you guys just saw, and then using an offer file. Like when you make your first offer, you're going to go from I described it to you to, oh.
Yeah.
In a boardroom at the New York Stock Exchange, I showed them making an offer file, and I didn't submit it, but they went, there really is no other interim exchange, peer, nothing. You're literally going to do an open outcry. No one can steal from you. You can only get what you're asking for in the open outcry.
And I tell you, one of the things that I think you guys are brilliant about is the gaming side, because I think the lessons you're going to learn in gaming are going to be directly applicable to bigger things. So congratulations on thinking about that and using that as a stepping stone.
Yeah, that's always been the plan. The nice thing about gaming is you don't need a liquidity provider because people just bring their own liquidity each session. So that's why we're starting.
No, that's true.
Now, longer term, that pre-farm is a nice liquidity provider.
So I do have a question in one of the comments. Brian J said Chia is delivering the Bitcoin we were promised. I think what he means is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, this is what you thought you were getting with Bitcoin, but now you're getting it with Chia. I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah, we consider ourselves to be part of the Bitcoin experience. It was very much, look, if things had gone differently, the stuff we've built is stuff you can do on Bitcoin and should be done on Bitcoin. Secure the bag is a Bitcoin idea that we've implemented and still doesn't work on Bitcoin. And, when you put these things together, vaults and offers and secure the bag, you start building an entirely new market capability that you just never had before, period. And global too. We in the West take a lot of things for granted.
Yeah, Chia is very much a next-gen Bitcoin. It's part of the same project. We hope in the future some of the lessons from Chia can back propagate onto Bitcoin. It's very hard to do that because of Bitcoin's own internal things right now, but this is all very, very much the whole Satoshi's vision of how to do things is being carried out on Chia.
Very cool. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. This exceeded my expectations and hopes for a show. This is just great.
Thank you, guys.
I've got to say, guys, in closing that I said that you guys would be $1 trillion coin when I talked to Gene just about the digital asset part of this, but what I see is now, because we're going to be talking to all 55 states and territories in the United States about what is crypto, why does it have any value at all, and what is that value? On the last call we were on with Unstoppable, and they talked about having this privacy and, but they don't have the checks and balances that you're talking about, Bram and Gene. They don't have that ability to claw back. If somebody... Because remember, we're talking about state employees that really, as Marv had said before, the legislators, whatever, can pass whatever laws, but this stuff ends up on their desk and there are no laws. They don't know what to do with it. So it's sitting there. Well, when it's sitting there, does that mean that an employee might just pull all the Bitcoin off that laptop that they got from this inheritance where there was no next of kin found? And who knows if they sent off 20 Bitcoin to themselves or whatever, because nobody even knew it was there. But like if there are new policies put into law that will tell them how, and Mark on the last one talked about why not just call it legal tender? If it reaches a certain threshold of the digital gold standard benchmark, the CFV is met. And I don't mean Texas saying if it's $500 billion, then we can invest in it. Well, then you just excluded literally everything but Bitcoin. But if the state treasuries have a method of safekeeping their crypto, knowing what it is, how it's valued, what it's worth, and then how to keep that safe. And with the clawbacks and that, you guys just said how to keep it safe. And so we lost Gene there, but
and add to it just the idea that you can have multiple signatories. That's an internal safeguard. I mean, here in Arizona, we're famous for, under the Hobbs administration, one of her department people sent a whole bunch of money, I think 7 figures, to a prince in Nigeria.
Whoa.
No.
Stuff up. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I guarantee they're getting a kickback. No, of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Bram,
Thank
Senators, thank you so much. God bless you, Bram, for everything you've done literally from
Thank
the
you.
90s to now, bro. You're even more my hero than ever. God bless
Can't
you
wait
for
to see
coming
what's
here on the
next.
holiday week. I know, right? She is my new favorite coin. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Cheers.